There are a couple more areas that I wish to speak that are separate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mike Saban.
Mr. Chair, pleased to take a call. The second part largely dealing with matters related to penalties. And one of the challenges in terms of talking about the complexity of the formula is because what it's trying to achieve is to better reflect the modern day society. And that's really a case, Mr. Chair, I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too, or people can have their cake and eat it too in that respect. The second part, Mr. Chair, dealing with rules-related payments and penalties and the write-offs, there is a perverse incentive develops where people feel that their payments and their obligations get beyond them and they stop making them. One of the implications of that, sir, is spelt out in the over $2 billion worth of debt that we see, and 70% of that is penalties. So this bill, and the second part really is dealing with ways in which we can try and change the levers to encourage parents to be making those payments, to meeting their responsibilities. And if we come back to the premise or the reason for child support in the very first place, Mr. Chair, it's because parents can't agree and don't have an amicable platform and relationship in which they can ensure the needs of their children are being met, at least in a financial sense. Mr. Chair, we hear from the other side of the House that this is about vulnerable children in this context. This is about child poverty. I'm bemused by this. Is this bill, is this what we're dealing with here? Is this dealing with child poverty? Is this a welfare bill? Is this Ministry of Social Development dealing with this? No, I believe it is actually the Minister of Revenue. This is administration.
Point of order. Doctor.
Part 2 of the bill, so far the members discussed the formula and aspects that have been in the Part 1 debate in terms of vulnerable children and whether children are at the centre of the legislation. Or is it acceptable to have a wider debate?
No, it's not acceptable. I've sort of probably shown a little tolerance, as I did in Part 1 when some members strayed. I hold myself responsible for allowing that leniency, and I'll ask the member to continue. Mike Saban.
Sir, thank you, sir. I was under the impression that that this was a very important aspect of debate from the other side. Obviously, they've moved on. The point being, Mr. Chair, with regard to the penalties, if what we're talking about with this legislation, what we're talking about with this part of the bill is the ability to ensure that the payments are reaching their intended target and not being drowned out in administration and in penalties and disincentivising parents from ultimately making the payments which will be then spent on the children. So the point that I was trying to make, sir, is that this is very much at the heart of what this legislation is setting out to achieve, and the complex formula that the opposition are talking about is that we're trying to ensure some efficiencies so that the administration of the monies from the respective parents is finding its end user, that being the children. Mr. Chair, the bill, and I just want to run through a couple of specific points with regard to the penalties. This bill allows for compulsory deductions of child support from employment income payments to parents. And in many cases, Mr. Chair, this will take a load off, a liability off, and will ensure that payments are streamlined, and that in itself will take care of some of the issues. Introduces a two-stage initial penalty, with the current full 10% only being charged if the debt remains unpaid after 7 days. Again, providing incentives to try and encourage the payment. It reduces the incremental monthly penalty from 2% to 1% after a year of non-compliance, complemented by intensive case management from Inland Revenue. The point being, Mr. Chair, and it goes on, relaxes the circumstances in which penalties can be written off, including when a paying parent enters into an instalment arrangement or something of that manner. The point being, Mr. Chair, there is over $2 billion worth of debt, 70% of it as a result of penalties. Something is not working here, and that something ultimately denies those children who, in my submission, sir, this is nothing to do with vulnerable children. This is to do with parents who can't agree, and the administration process that's required to find agreement, Mr. Chair. This is not about a need for any implicit or explicit direction in legislation as to children being at the heart of it. This is about the administration and the penalties being such an important part of getting the levers under control, so that the money that parents are paying into the scheme is ultimately being spent by those parents in the benefit of the children. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.